Berlin, Germany. Summer 1940. An American engineer walks out of a German factory carrying something that will save millions of gallons of fuel and countless lives if anyone listens. It's a 20-liter fuel container with 3 handles, one brilliant cam lever cap, and an X-shaped indentation that serves 3 critical functions most people will never notice. 2 years later, the U.S. War Department will copy this design perfectly, except they'll change one invisible detail. And that change will turn German perfection into an American disaster. Hit that like button right now if you want to hear how one manufacturing shortcut caused a logistics nightmare. Quick question: where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Let me show you what perfection looks like. The Wehrmacht Einheitskanister, the German military standard fuel container. Developed in 1937 by engineer Vinzenz Grünvogel at Müller Engineering Works in Schwelm, Westphalia. The German Army officially adopted it on July 8, 1937, via Order AHM No. 324. It's not just a fuel can. It's a masterpiece of engineering design. 20 liters, approximately 5.3 U.S. gallons, or 4.4 imperial gallons. 2 stamped sheets of steel welded together with an X-shaped seam that runs across both faces. 3 handles. 2 short ones on the sides for one-handed carrying. 1 long one across the top for two-handed carrying or passing in a chain. The handles are recessed so cans stack without interference. The design allows one soldier to carry 2 full cans over 10 gallons of fuel lore for empty ones at once. But the real genius is the cap. It's not a screw top that requires tools. It's a cam lever system with an internal breather pipe. Here's how it works. Flip the lever. The seal releases. Air enters through the breather. Fuel pours smoothly, cleanly, without glugging or splashing. One person can pour the entire 20 liters in seconds. No funnel needed. No second person needed. No wrench needed. You can refuel a vehicle in the field faster than most people can pump gas at a modern station. Now look at those X-shaped indentations pressed into both faces. They're not decorative. They serve 3 precise engineering functions. First, structural rigidity. A flat steel panel flexes under pressure and impact. The X-shaped crease creates 4 triangular sections that are dramatically stiffer. The can won't buckle when stacked or dropped. Second, expansion relief. Gasoline expands roughly 2 to 3% when heated significantly. In desert heat, minus 120 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, that expansion creates internal pressure. The indentation flexes outward slightly, relieving that pressure. The can doesn't rupture. The seams don't split. Third, contraction compensation. When fuel cools at night and contracts, the indentation flexes back inward. No vacuum pressure develops. No air gets sucked in through seals. No impurities contaminate the fuel. It's elegant. It's simple. Every single feature serves a purpose. The Germans tested these containers ruthlessly before adoption. Dropped from trucks at speed, frozen, baked in ovens. Stacked under tons of weight. Thrown, kicked, dragged. They don't leak. They don't fail. They don't crack. German quartermasters could stack thousands of these in supply depots, transport them thousands of miles, subject them to extreme conditions, and expect minimal losses. Less than 1% fuel loss from container failure under normal field conditions. That's not just good, that's revolutionary. Because every other military in the world was losing fuel at catastrophic rates. Subscribe and turn on notifications because you need to hear what happens when America tries to copy this. According to widely repeated but officially unverified accounts, an American engineer named Paul Pleiss had been working in Berlin for years before the war. He'd watched the Wehrmacht prepare for mechanized warfare. He'd seen these containers tested. He knew American fuel containers were garbage by comparison. So in summer 1940, according to these accounts, he boards a ship to New York. He brings several jerry cans with him. He brings technical drawings. He brings manufacturing specifications. He's going to show the U.S. Army the best fuel container ever designed. What is documented beyond dispute? In summer 1940, samples of the German jerrycan arrived at the U.S. Quartermaster General's office. Whether brought by Plies on a dramatic journey or through other intelligence channels, we cannot verify from official records. But the containers themselves were real. They were remarkable. And American military engineers had a perfect opportunity to adopt superior German engineering before the United States even entered the war. The War Department looked at these samples, examined them, tested them, understood their superiority, and rejected them. The official reason was never documented clearly. Some accounts suggest not invented here syndrome. Some suggest concerns about manufacturing complexity. Some suggest simple institutional inertia. The U.S. military had existing fuel containers, existing supply chains, existing procurement contracts with American manufacturers. Why change? Why admit that Germans, a potential enemy, had designed something better than anything America produced? Eventually, someone at Camp Holabird in Maryland took interest. The Quartermaster Corps' research facility agreed to evaluate the design. They measured every dimension. They photographed every feature. They tested the cam lever mechanism. They analyzed the steel composition. They understood exactly why the German design was superior. And then they redesigned it. American style. North Africa. September 1942. American chemical engineer Richard M. Daniels steps off a plane in Egypt. He's been sent by the War Department to investigate reports of catastrophic fuel losses. What he finds is worse than anyone in Washington imagined. British quartermaster units are reporting losses of 30% to 40% between port and front line. 30 to 40%. That means for every 100 gallons shipped from the depot, only 60 to 70 gallons reach the tanks, trucks, and aircraft that need it. The rest, gone, evaporated, leaked, spilled, soaked into sand. War correspondent Alan Moorhead, embedded with British forces, writes, "The great bulk of the British Army was forced to stick to the old flimsy 4-gallon container. We could put a couple of petrol cans in the back of a truck. 2 hours of bumping over desert rocks usually produced a suspicious smell. British General Claude Auchinleck estimates 30% of all fuel never reaches its destination. In one documented case that Daniels investigates personally, 70,000 imperial gallons leave the depot. 30,000 gallons arrive at the front. That's a 57% loss. The quartermaster in charge reports this as a good effort because sometimes the losses are even worse. Let me show you why this is happening. The British are using containers they call flimsies. The name tells you everything. Thin tin cans with soldered seams, 4-gallon capacity. They buckle when stacked. They split when dropped. They leak when heated. The soldered seams lead-based solder holding tin sheets together fail constantly under desert conditions. Temperature cycling does it. Daytime temperatures in North Africa regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Nighttime temperatures drop 40 to 50 degrees. The metal expands during the day, contracts at night. The solder joints flex, crack, separate microscopically. Fuel seeps out. Not gushing, leaks those would be noticed and fixed. Seepage, a slow, steady loss that multiplies across thousands of containers. The Americans are using their own designs, some dating back to World War I, 5-gallon rectangular cans with screw caps and cork gaskets. 55-gallon drums that require pumps and hoses. Containers designed for stationary storage at re-echelon depots, not mechanized warfare across deserts. The screw caps require wrenches. The cork gaskets degrade in heat. The drums are too heavy to maneuver quickly. Pouring requires funnels, 2 men, and several minutes per container. None of them were designed for the kind of warfare happening in 1942. Daniels watches fuel seep into sand. He watches soldiers struggle with containers that require tools, patience, and luck. He watches the entire Allied logistics system hemorrhage the one resource that powers everything. Tanks, trucks, aircraft, generators, all of it runs on petroleum. And 30 to 40% of it is disappearing before it reaches the front. He sends a cable to Washington. In his 1987 article, The Little Can That Could, published in Invention and Technology magazine, Daniels would later admit candidly, "My colleague and I sent a cable to naval officials in Washington, stating that 40% of all the gasoline sent to Egypt was being lost through spillage and evaporation." We added that a detailed report would follow. The 40% figure was actually a guess, intended to provoke alarm. It worked. Whether it's Daniels' provocative 40% estimate, Auchinleck's documented 30%, or the 57% loss in that specific case, the losses are devastating. Tanks running out of fuel during operations. Supply columns forced to carry double what they need because everyone knows a significant portion won't arrive. Entire offensives delayed because fuel can't reach the front line fast enough. Here's a question for you. Have you ever seen a small detail cause a massive problem? Drop your answer in the comments. And here's the thing that drives everyone insane. The Germans don't have this problem. Captured Wehrmacht supply dumps are filled with green steel containers that look new even after months of desert use. Allied soldiers start hoarding captured German jerry cans. Supply officers start requesting them by name. Within months, German jerry cans become more valuable than almost any other piece of captured equipment. A British tank crew will trade rations, cigarettes, even ammunition for a genuine German jerry can. Because German containers work. They don't leak. They stack properly. They pour quickly. They survive conditions that destroy Allied containers. British intelligence wants to know why. They want to know how German containers can survive conditions that destroy Allied ones. They want to know if this is some advanced metallurgy, some secret alloy, some revolutionary manufacturing process. It's not. It's just good engineering. Engineering that, according to those unverified accounts, an American named Paul Pleiss tried to bring to the United States 2 years earlier. Engineering the U.S. Army rejected. Here's where it gets infuriating. American engineers at Camp Holabird in late 1940 and early 1941 create their version of the jerry can. They have the German original sitting right in front of them. They have detailed measurements. They have technical drawings. They have everything they need to copy it exactly. And they do copy it, almost exactly. They keep the dimensions 20 liters, same external size. They keep the 3 handles, 2 side handles, 1 top handle, all recessed for stacking. They keep the capacity and the general shape. They keep the cam lever cap with its quick-release mechanism. They even keep the X-shaped indentations, though they simplify the pattern slightly. From the outside, the American jerry can looks almost identical to the German original, but they change one thing. One invisible thing. One detail you can't see from the outside. The seam construction. Let me show you why this matters. The German jerry can uses electric resistance welded seams. The stamped steel halves are pressed together and welded along the X-shaped joint using electrical resistance welding. The weld is recessed below the surface. It's strong. It's completely sealed. It creates a molecular bond between the metal sheets. It's also expensive. It requires specialized equipment. It requires skilled welders. It requires quality control and testing. The American version uses rolled seams. The edges of the 2 steel halves are folded together and crimped. Mechanical pressure holds them together. No welding, no molecular bonding. It's faster to manufacture. It requires less specialized equipment. It's significantly cheaper. And for containers holding water or non-volatile liquids, it works fine. For gasoline in desert heat, it's a disaster. Richard M. Daniels would later write with the authority of a chemical engineer who witnessed the consequences. As any petroleum engineer knows, it is unsafe to store gasoline in a container with rolled seams. Here's why. Gasoline is volatile. It evaporates easily. It penetrates microscopic gaps. It degrades organic seals. A rolled seam, no matter how tightly crimped, has microscopic gaps where the metal folds overlap. Under normal conditions, those gaps are small enough that losses are minimal. But add temperature cycling. Add impact stress from being thrown off trucks. Add the expansion and contraction of heating and cooling cycles. The crimped metal joint flexes. The gaps widen. The seepage begins. Not gushing leaks. Not dramatic failures that would trigger immediate alarm. Seepage, a wet ring around the seam. A slight smell of gasoline. A dark stain under a stack of cans sitting in the sun. Multiply that by thousands of containers. Multiply that by weeks or months of storage and transport. Multiply that by extreme desert conditions. The losses become catastrophic. American engineers also remove or simplify the interior breather tube in some versions. They eliminate the interior plastic lining that German fuel cans include. Those are problems, but they're minor compared to the seam issue. The rolled seam is the critical failure. Production begins. Tens of thousands of American jerry cans shipped to North Africa, to the Pacific, 2 training bases stateside. And immediately, universally, they perform worse than the German originals. The leaks aren't dramatic enough to trigger immediate alarm. Nobody's watching fuel pour out of containers. But the losses are there, constant, unavoidable. Not as bad as British flimsies, but far worse than German jerry cans. The American jerry cans arrive in North Africa in late 1941 and throughout 1942, right when Daniels is documenting the fuel crisis. Allied logistics officers quickly learned to sort containers into 3 categories. German jerry cans captured from the enemy for critical operations, for tank units about to engage, for aircraft that absolutely must fly. American jerry can shipped from the U.S. for less demanding uses, for rear echelon transport, for situations where some loss is acceptable. British flimsy slowly produced for everything else. For non-critical supplies. For situations where massive losses are simply expected and planned for. Think about what that means. Allied forces are preferring enemy equipment to their own. The rolled seams fail, the same way British soldered seams fail, just slightly slower.
Temperature cycling in desert heat is brutal. Daytime temperatures regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Metal expands, nighttime temperatures drop to Y-80 degrees Fahrenheit. Metal contracts. The American rolled seams flex with each cycle. Microscopic gaps become visible gaps. Seepage becomes leakage. A stack of 100 American jerry cans sitting in the sun for a week will leave a dark stain of evaporated fuel underneath. Not puddles, the fuel evaporates too quickly in the heat. Just stains and smell and waste. 100 cans, 20 liters each. Even if each can only loses half a liter to seepage and evaporation, that's 50 liters gone. Over 13 gallons from just one pallet. Just 1 week. Multiply that across an entire theater of war. Daniels, September 1942 alarm cable reaches Washington. His 40% estimate, though admittedly designed to provoke alarms and far from documented. British estimates of 30% or the 57% loss in that specific documented case. The War Department finally takes notice. Not because of early warnings in 1940, not because of obvious German engineering superiority that they could have copied exactly, because Allied operations are strangling on their own logistics. But And here's the absolutely infuriating part. The response isn't to fix American manufacturing, the response is to let the British handle it. British factories in 1943 begin mass-producing faithful copies of the German original. Welded seams not rolled. Full internal breather tubes. Proper plastic linings for fuel containers. No manufacturing shortcuts. No good enough compromises. By early 1943, 2 million British-made jerry cans shipped to North Africa. Millions more follow for the European campaign. These British jerry cans work. They don't leak. They survive desert heat and European mud. They stack properly. They pour quickly. They're everything the German original was. Now manufactured by the British. In 1943, after 2 years of catastrophic losses, American production continues making inferior rolled seam versions alongside the British welded versions. By VE Day in May 1945, over 19 million jerry cans were required to support U.S. forces in the European theater alone. Total Allied production reached approximately 22 million. Jerry cans of various designs scattered across Allied supply chains. In October 1944 alone, 3.5 million jerry cans are reported lost in administrative paperwork. Whether this represents actual losses, poor accounting, or redistribution to other units is unclear. The exact volume of fuel lost specifically to American rolled seam jerry cans cannot be calculated from surviving records. As Daniels noted in his 1987 article, little about the jerry can appears in the official record. The bureaucracy that initially rejected the superior German design continued to minimize documentation of the problem. But what is documented tells the story clearly enough. Severe Allied fuel losses in 1942-43. German container superiority that Allied soldiers recognized immediately. British manufacturing of proper welded copies by 1943. Eventual Allied logistics improvement. Once the correct design was finally produced at scale, the American rolled seam design remained a problem throughout the war, overshadowed by British production but never fully corrected. If you're angry about this bureaucratic failure, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The war ends. The jerry cans remain. Post-war analysis by military historians focuses on the broader logistics triumph of fact that Allied forces successfully moved millions of tons of supplies across oceans and continents to win the war. The jerry can becomes a footnote. The specific failure of American rolled seam construction receives little attention. Why would we want? The logistics worked well enough. Why dwell on early mistakes?
But in 1987, Richard M. Daniels publishes The Little Can That Could in Invention and Technology magazine. He's retired now. No career to protect. No bureaucracy to appease. He tells the truth. He candidly admits his 40% estimate was designed to provoke alarm. But he stands by his assessment that conditions in North Africa in 1942 were appalling. He explains exactly why the American rolled seam design failed. He explains why German welded seams were superior. He explains why British copies finally worked. And he asks the question that should haunt every engineer and bureaucrat. Why didn't we just copy it exactly the first time? We had the original. We had the specifications. We had the opportunity in 1940, before the war, to adopt superior German engineering. Instead, we changed one detail. One invisible detail that seemed like a harmless manufacturing shortcut: the seam construction. And that single change turned perfection into failure. The jerry can design itself remained in military service through the Korean War, Vietnam, and into the 1980s. Military specifications governing jerrycan construction eventually mandated welded seams. The U.S. military effectively abandoned the American rolled seam approach and adopted the German-British welded standard. The NATO standard 20-liter military fuel container used today is essentially the NADA 1937 German design with minor modifications. It's now codified in specifications like MIL-C 2A3F from 1985 and its successors. Same capacity, same 3 handles, same cam lever cap, same X-shaped indentations, same welded seams. Because that's what works. The jerrycan is still used worldwide today, still recognizable as the Vinzenz Grünvogel design, still manufactured with welded seams because that's what's required for reliability, still a testament to getting every detail right the first time. Final question before we wrap up. What's the most frustrating example you've seen of someone almost getting it right but missing one critical detail? Drop it in the comments. So what's the lesson here? It's this: invisible details matter more than obvious features. American engineers looked at the German jerrycan and saw the 3 handles, saw the cam lever cap, saw the X-shaped indentations, saw the overall design. They copied all of that. But they missed or deliberately changed the one detail you couldn't see from the outside: the seam construction, the invisible joint that held everything together. And that single invisible detail destroyed the functionality of the entire design. This is a lesson about engineering, about manufacturing, about institutional arrogance, about the cost of not invented here syndrome, about assuming you can cut corners on details that seem minor. The German jerrycan succeeded because Grünvogel and Müller. Engineering understood that every detail matters in field conditions. The welded seam wasn't optional. The internal breather wasn't optional. The X-shaped indentation wasn't decorative. Everything served a purpose. Everything was tested under extreme conditions. American engineers kept the visible features and changed the invisible ones. They assumed rolled seams would be good enough. They assumed simplified manufacturing would be acceptable. They assumed the details didn't matter as much as the overall design. They were wrong. And while exact statistics remain elusive, the consequences were measured in fuel soaking into sand. Operations delayed for lack of supplies, and Allied soldiers preferring captured German containers to American-made ones. Sometimes the best thing you can do is copy someone else's brilliance exactly as designed. No shortcuts, no improvements, no assumptions that you know better. Just copy what works, completely, including the invisible parts. If this story changed how you think about engineering and attention to detail, smash that like button right now. Every like tells YouTube to show this to more people who need to understand that details matter. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because next week we've got another story about a small detail that changed everything, a 13-second decision that saved 150,000 lives and revolutionized naval warfare. Something they study at Annapolis but never fully explain. Drop your location in the comments. Tell us about a time when one small detail made all the difference. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And remember, the next time you are tempted to simplify or improve something that already works perfectly, ask yourself if you really understand why every single detail is there. Because sometimes the genius isn't in what you can see, it's in what you can't.